Healthy Food Africa has been in existence since 2020 and it comes to an end in 2024 in November. It has been building the resilience of food systems and has been working with all of the actors within the value chain. We have been working together with 17 other organizations across Africa and Europe.
The aim is to connect food value chains from production to consumption and working with informal sector players, starting with farmers in production, as well as supporting marketeers in informal trading places such as markets.
Here in Zambia, we have been working in Chongwe and in Lusaka to build the capacity of various actors. Particularly in Lusaka, we have been working with traders to build their capacity on resilience and sustainable food systems. And then for Chongwe, we have been working with farmers on sustainable production methods and how that contributes to sustainable food systems.
The challenges that farmers are facing are multidimensional, looking at access to markets, and on one end, looking at the challenge of productivity and production. There is a lack of sustainable knowledge practices that are agroecological in nature. Farmers do not really have the knowledge on how to be resilient.
Soba proper irrigation system zosebenzesa zotirira yaleta vuto yaikulu ku chitukuko cha famu ino. Pano pa famu kutirira tiriko na ka water pump kameti matirira ka engine ka fuel. Sintawu zonse kunena kuti ati engine imankala bwino iya na ibe mankana ma breakdowns and tauzina because of vintu mwameviriri nchaka chino nichovuta even zaka za kumbuyo zapeza ati mwapereka mbeu mwafoshola but you still want to continue then mzapeza kati mulibe ndrama ya fuel so mzajama for some time until mwakongola mwachita bwanji mwasiya bagarden mwachita abandon mwendo sankerako mapisweki mwapezako tundrama futi mwabwero yamba futi garden so sinkala consistent ya kutati vintu vienderera accordingly.
The lack of power has impacted on farming activities in a very negative way. There are days when for 3 days we have no power, so you cannot pump water, you cannot irrigate. And vegetables, if for 3 days you do not water in this weather, they wither and die. Meaning that's a complete loss of whatever you had invested. In terms of exploring alternative energy sources, what has hindered is the cost.
When we started off, we wanted to build their capacity in sustainable production, so we took them through a course on organic farming. Their capacity has been built, definitely, and they are able to farm more sustainably. However, when it comes to extending this much needed knowledge to actually bring their produce to markets, there are a lot of challenges. And that is where this discussion around working with various stakeholders within the food system becomes very important. Because much as you have built the capacity around production, it has to interact with transporters, it has to interact with markets, it has to interact with policy. So for example, when you talk about people that are producing organic foods, when they come to the market, there's no price differentiation of the foods that they are selling. So that becomes a challenge. You go through so much to produce sustainably, but there's no accompanying policy to promote the new knowledge that they have gained.
The challenges that I usually face in trying to access market, one of it is that the formal markets have got some kind of restrictions, like barriers to entry. One, food handling, the packages, the specific crates that you're supposed to use, sometimes that are not even readily available on the Zambian market. And also to refrigerated trucks, to also the consistency aspect that they talk about, and also the fact that payments take longer than usual. So that automatically pushes you to the informal market.
The middlemen really are the ones that benefit from our farming enterprises. If you take our goods to the market, they would want to sell on our behalf and sell at whatever price.
They know that your produce can go maybe at 120 per bag, but they know that if they put it at 80 kwacha, in 10 minutes time, they'll be able to finish. So they finish so that they can do other things. Maybe they have got another stack, but the farmer hasn't realized the true value or the maximum profit they're supposed to get from their produce.
Farmer nikuzionera in short. Kuzasakira transport weka babwere bakutengere kuno then upeleke ku market then muzagwirizana muzamberana pamtengo whether nkala fair or unfair chiri kumwamene wachionera pantau iyo.
The road network affects us in a more negative way because we are always at the mercy of the transporters. It's more like you are literally begging because they always complain about the wear and tear of their vehicles, that even the price that we pay for them cannot suffice compared to the losses or the damage that is done to their vehicles.
Tauzina mwambira na mtengo winangu pobwera kuno awe road siri bwino kwa talimpa mzaikapo. So muzavutana vijava so ero muntu wamutenga kudala. So aza kuchita overcharge vija. And there are very few instances where you find vantu vabwera kusakira mbeo kuno. Unless otherwise avuta maningi. But kambi ni mafarmers ndife tupeleka kutaun katundu yatu.
The main challenge that we also have is food price volatilities, the spikes and fluctuation of prices.
In farming, it's quite tricky for you to plan properly because of the volatility of the prices, because you can do your budgeting now, but by the time you are going to the shops to buy your inputs, you might find that the prices maybe have increased by 10, 20% or even 30%. So that automatically affects your planning and also your production costs.
For example, broiler feed last week, it was somewhere around 620. You go this week, you find it 670, including fuel. If you have to get on a transport, today you are charged this amount, tomorrow it's another amount, so it is making life very difficult. You cannot even budget because you don't know what to expect when you go out there.
You find that on one end in Zambian kwacha, you have a box of tomato, for example, selling for 500 kwacha. The other day, a marketeer can sell that same box of tomatoes around 20 Zambian kwacha. So you find that the fluctuations are too much. So you find out of frustrations, marketeers will throw their tomatoes in the markets. Huge losses in terms of food loss and waste. This is a very big challenge among marketeers, but also affecting farmers on the production side.
Volatilities affect everyone, starting from production, because if you have interacted with the farmers, you will hear that one of their biggest cries is that they produce without knowing what the price of what they'll produce will be. The price will be dictated by what is ongoing in the market. So no matter how much cost they incur in terms of water, in terms of fertilizers and so on, it will depend on what will be the final price at the market when they take it. And if all of them have produced at the same time and they get to the market and there's so much flooding of that particular product, then you find that the price will really go down and they might not recover their costs. It's the same with the consumers. Sometimes the consumers, because the producers are not talking to each other and no one has produced at that particular time, just the price of one tomato becomes so expensive, it affects the consumer negatively. So it's all about just talking to one another on who needs to do what at a particular point in time.
Another challenge that affects both players, marketeers, and farmers alike is access to finance. Yeah, so you find that many farmers, due to the many bottlenecks that financial systems have, the less literate are unable to access some of these finances. So that's a very critical challenge.
It's not easy to access finance for you to invest in a farm enterprise because even if you access one, the interest rates are quite high, and then also the instability of prices. It's very difficult for you to tell the lending institutions how much you'll be able to pay every month.
As a result, muzagulisa upeze kati supeza futi profit kuti umaintain capital buno bwino. Ipeze kati zijandrama zanowa kongola zonse zipeze kazanowa sebenza zabwerera futi. Dabena ngopeze kati wangena kona makalo waso imankana ni milandu imankana ma challenges maningi.
Usually it's not easy to make financial products highly prescriptive. Looking at the informal sector where most of our smallholders are found, it's very critical to tailor-make these financial services context specific based on the different challenges or different dimensions that confront the farmers or the marketeers that we work with. For example, in terms of mechanization, there's one firm which is having a good approach, I must say, Aglisco. It helps farmers in terms of mechanization. Yeah, so if you want to buy a processor for tomatoes, so you may not really need to have collateral. The very equipment you have is the collateral on its own. One other approach is the one thing that we are seeing the public sector pushing, the CDF, but it also has its own ups and downs because not all the farmers can have access to this finance if you go on the ground to ask. So unlocking some of those challenges confronting these financial solutions would be something that would be helpful if truly the grassroots should be supported, farmers and marketeers alike.
Munga mungaonere pano pa farm I have no shade yakuti ningasungiremo, so chame chimachitika chabe ukakolola immediately uyembekeza kuti wachite bwanji bogula babwere bagule babitenge bikuchoke. Yakaliko chitabesti one yazadya fuel, two you need again bamene ma fertilizer kuti yachite maintain kama onekedo yakaena, so nshwendera mazingeni. So you'll be forced to pick them, harvest them and take them to the market. Uzaindo vionena kwa mino kukusogora.
Ma challenges kambili yaneti mankala na eve muno market. Ima pezikati ma farmers bali be ma dryers olo ma storage mofaka makatundu. So wa mankala kona ka force kaja kwa mgoleta che makatundu baleta anyhow like munga mwane monera. Vikatundu ni vambili muno market kube space jokti ya salako mwaembekeza kwa at first ichepane konde kungene at least kankala ko ma storage olo wankala ko na ma dryers inkala ko mushi. Ndani jokti mzaenda kufamu mwenda mwaoda mzao 100 kwacha mwaoda 100 kwacha fama chifukwacho kuti ayo pakatundi zamono kera muja mumunda azavile takuna zavika ete kwacha so waoda 100 kwacha kuti ugulise price ya bwino za kuvuta kaileva zavika mu ete kwacha so nje ma challenges yanti mankala na eve pesa katuonze onze na capital bwino but ingeli.
The primary causes of food loss in my farming practice is one, when I harvest, I do not have, a sophisticated place where I store my produce so that it keeps fresh. I'll put it maybe under a shade like where we are seated right now, and then package it to take to the market. Secondly, the transportation is not very reliable. We have to hire trucks and to be an open truck, it's not closed. Then we take to the market also, it's in an open space, all sorts of things are happening there, the sun, the wind, and it reduces the quality of whatever I've taken there.
tomato chamene makozinga kuti yachorewa sinasirire same day mankhala kona madamage ndichi funika same day abwera kuti wakufamu mwagulise asiri koma tiyagona ngalapo madamage.
If you look at most production in Zambia has a very low level of technology. So you find that if we are having a peak in onion or tomato production, the levels of technology or equipment that can help a farmer process these is very low. You can only sell your product as and when you have it. Out of season, that product goes bad, that product is not available. So one way of utilizing these opportunities where we have highs in terms of product availability on the market is increasing processing. We have a very low level of processing in our value chain. So in the context of tomatoes, this could be an opportunity to have tomato pastes, that can be used even off season, that can be exported, that can be used even in different dishes post the season. Another thing that is critical in taking advantage of the peaks that we have in production is utilizing cold storage facilities. Having an increase in cold storage for marketeers and farmers alike would increase the shelf life of these products, but also increasing the level of mechanization throughout the whole production value chain.
Crop diversification ni njira inangu yamene mulimi afunika kusinta mbewu mumunda kalimayi alimayi and then futi asalime mbewu imozi pantawu imozi alimeko chishango ichi alimeko chishango ichi. So ngati ungalimeko vishango vinangu vikupasa ndrama yambiri, vishango vinangu vikupasa ndrama basi vingakupasa ndrama unga vishango vinangu. So wasankaniza na eve imatandiza na kutukuka muntu ungatukuka oloti ungazidandaula but uku ungalepere uku wachitako bwino. So ndio bwino wa crop diversification.
Managing the risk of fluctuating prices of crops is quite tricky. The best that we actually do is just diversification. You do maybe several crops so that when this one doesn't do well, maybe the prices have dropped, you are able to hinge on this one.
In context where we have droughts, for example, the El Nino that we had, you find that many farmers highly invested in single crops. Maybe it could be tomatoes, others just went flat out only with cabbages, with maize. There is no much diversification in the production systems that we are having in Zambia. So mainly farmers focus on monocultures, on crops that are trending are the ones that seem to attract farmers. And thus, with the challenge of a drought, you find that there is total crop failure in many cases, as we saw in the past rainy season.
One of the researches that has really guided our intervention with the marketeers is that the population of Lusaka, most of us are getting our food from the informal markets. And what that means is that we're interacting a lot with traders. However, the traders that we are interacting with do not sit in policy spaces, and yet they are the ones that are providing this food. So through this project, we have been building their capacity in advocacy so that they can have an interface with the local authority to really talk about what are the issues that they see, how do they see these issues being addressed. So I'll give an example of, say, tomato flooding the market. We brought that discussion to the traders, and what they said was that the problem is that everyone is bringing these tomatoes to the market at the same time. So if, for instance, the local authority can have a program or a schedule that can be followed, such that today we know that the people that are bringing in tomatoes are from Mukushi, tomorrow we know that they are coming from Mumbwa. So if you'd have a schedule like that, they feel like the market will not be flooded, and therefore the price will not be dropped to such low levels that a lot of tomatoes go to waste.
I would recommend that we need to mechanize more our production systems. We need to mechanize the value chains. This will increase the resilience of our farming system, but also increase production and productivity. Another thing is to have our farming more diverse. We need our farmers to embrace a diversified farming system, but a critical part on policy is to increase access to irrigation. We cannot talk about agriculture or sustainable agriculture or resilient agricultural systems without water, which is a very critical part. Because if we do not invest in irrigation, our systems are not resilient due to challenges that come with climate change. Irrigation is critical.